All right, so we're talking about our overhauls. Um, how long can an engine go between overhauls? Depends on the manufacturer. They're going to tell you how long it has to go over overhaul. We talked about this the other day. What was the 290? Anybody remember?
Wasn't it 1500?
1500? Let me see. Do I still have it?
That sounds about right.
The D was...
2000.
Where is it? There it is. 2,000 hours. 2,000 hours or 12 years. Whichever comes first. So question, do you have to overhaul your engine at 12 years or 2,000 hours?
Yes.
Whichever. Do you have to?
If you're not going to use it anymore.
If you're just like me and you have your plane and you're just flying it around and use it for your own personal enjoyment, nope. You do not have to overhaul it if you don't want to.
Who's gonna what? Who's gonna check?
Well, the FAA could. They could ramp check you. There's a thing called ramp check where they come up and say, let me see your logbooks. Of course, you would say, well, I didn't bring my engine logbooks with me.
Oh, so you've experienced it?
No.
Oh.
Ram checks are scary.
No, I've never had one. But they could. And you'd say, well, in Part 91, they could look at it and go, geez, this thing is a 2,000 hour TBO and you've got 4,000 hours on it? Yep. Okay. There's nothing they can do. If you're flying for hire, that's a totally different thing. So it's kind of weird. If you are, I don't want to get too far into this, but if you're just, it's called Part 91, General Operating Flight Rules. If you're just a private person, not for hire, not commercial, you do not have to do service bulletins, letters, instructions. You do not have to comply with, which is where TBO is published in there. So you don't have to.
But you have to comply with ADs?
Have to comply with ADs. And if an AD says you have to do a service bulletin, you have to do it. No. Okay. So what have you done so far out there in the shop? You've disassembled. You're working on cleaning. Some of you say, I think said you're done. Cleaning methods. You know, the manual's nice. It has things like vapor degrease in there and different type of chemicals and stuff. In California, we can't do much more than what we already have here. Some citrus-based cleaners, the Hot C. Where I worked, we tried as much as we could to go to this type of operation. When I first worked there, I don't want to bore you with stories, there was this stuff called Turco. And I wish that I would have just saved a jar of Turco. And it was called a carburetor cleaner or decarbonizing agent. It's a very, very caustic chemical. And to get it on you would burn. If it got a drop on you, you'd know it in a few minutes. It's like, I got that stuff on me. And it would burn. So you have to wear gloves when you were working around it. So we had a tank that was just the size of this table. Exactly. And so what we would do is we'd disassemble the engine and we put it on this rack, and the crankshaft and the crankcase and everything, just boom, go on there, and you'd lower it in there, and then you'd let it sit overnight, and then the next morning you'd come up and the paint would just slide right off of it, and the carbon would be all gone, and the gunk was all gone. And this is my favorite part. And then you would take it outside the door, and we use a Stoddard solvent, which is a petroleum-based product.
Bug spray.
Huh?
Old bug spray.
Old bug spray?
Yeah, you remember?
Really? No, I'm not that old. But I've seen the cartoons where they did that. The Bugs Bunny had one. But anyway, we would use this. We'd have like a 5-gallon Jeep can and a sprayer. And it's just like a paint sprayer. You know, it has air coming through. You hook up the air jet, and it would blow air out, but it would also have a suction hose. It would suck up the Stoddard solvent. So it would be, this nasty aerosol kind of spray going out. Actually, I'm sorry. First, we'd wash it off with water. We'd take it outside, wash it off with water, and get all the Turco stuff to run off and clean it up with fresh water. Then we would spray it with this solvent stuff. And my friend Danny, he'd always have a cigarette while he did it. So I guess it wasn't really explosive, but because of aerosol stuff. Now here's the funny part. We would do all of this, and the river was literally, I would be standing like from here to the wall next to the levee, and the river's right on the other side. And that turquoise stuff we were washing off went down into the ground, which probably went into the river. But also the well for the place where we drank the water was like right there. And so the water would come out brown. And it never stopped coming out brown. I wouldn't drink that stuff either. So anyway, so that was the old, that was the old unenvironmentally friendly. And then we had a new guy came in. He's like, well, we can't be ruining the environment here. And so we got the hot sea cleaner, and we got rid of that turco tank. We got stuff that was actually a soap-based cleaner, and changed everything. And then we went to that in the media, which is very emulates what you guys are doing right now, which is a lot more environmentally friendly. So you take your parts, you put them in the hot sea, you run the hot sea, and it washes that oil off. Oil goes in that water, we run a skimmer, it goes into an oil thing. We take the oil and we cart it off. So much better. So anyway, so what are our cleaning methods? Well, now we're using more like pressure cabinets, which you know. Cabinet, I tried to spell cabinet, C-A-B-I-N-E-T. We have our pressure cabinet, which of course we're using water and soap, right? What's the danger with using the water and the soap, which the manual says?
Can get embedded in the-
So, okay, first soap can get embedded in that and start foaming with the oil. Okay, well, I only use a hot sea product that is made for that cabinet, that's made for what we're doing, that is a non-foaming type soap. So it's specially formulated to do this. I'm a big proponent of hots, if you don't know that. We used to use this stuff called Ripper One. I mean, it's this incredible soap. It is just wow. And you can wash an engine off with it and hose it off. It's like, dang, that looks new. And I gave the dog a bath in it. He looked like new. No. And then make a Ripper 2 that would actually like rip stuff apart, rip the skin off you. So anyway, there's a lot of really good soaps. What was really kind of funny is I guess James had just cleaned out the hot seat. Anyway, I heard that he just drained it and refilled it. I don't know why. And we didn't have soap, and somebody who wasn't supposed to be touching it just threw a bunch of car wash soap in there.
Oh God.
So we definitely had to redrain it at that point because it really foamed. All right, so you have pressure cabinet. We used to have a safety. We still have one type of safety clean. Safety clean, and that's really a citrus base. But we used to have a tank that looked just like this one down here. That parts would go in a little agitator bucket and go back and forth. You can get that in all different kind of flavors from Safety Clean. All right, so we have our Safety Clean, which you guys know about. And then we have our blast cabinets. Blast cabinets. You either have a good blast cabinet that you love and take good care of, or you have a piece of crap that you fight the entire time. In my shop, I had 4 blast cabinets, and if you touched my blast cabinet, I would give you the stink eye because mine were perfect and worked perfect all of the time. And I took really good care of them. You're supposed to have a plastic screen over the front of the glass because when you use harsh media, it would frost the glass and you can't see through it. Be careful when you're holding a part. You're holding a part and you're blasting it. Here's my blast nozzle, right? You're going to blast a hole in the glove if you're holding it. Don't blast the gloves. You blast a hole in them, MJ. Hold it like this. Don't blast the glove. Don't let the glass bounce against the glass. Now, the walnut shell can't hurt the glass in there. You can blast right at the glass. You can clean the glass with it. It won't hurt anything. Don't do it, all right? MJ, don't do it. He's the guy that would... Yeah. Okay, blast. Okay, so what are my different media types? Media types. In fact, if you're going to be an engine guy, I think I have more hours. I wish hours in front looking through a blast screen counted for something good. So these are the ones I'm very familiar with and like to use a lot of. Garnet, glass, plastic, sodium, and walnut shell. I'm going to write it all down, MJ. You're okay. So what is garnet? I hear people say, gosh, garnet. So. Yeah, it's stones. It's stuff. Somebody said it was crushed coral. I don't think that's true at all. But yeah, it's like stones. This is in descending order, really. Not quite. So garnet, though, is the harshest stuff on here. So we actually used garnet in one of our booths for ripping. We're cleaning the head of valves, never the stem. You hit the stem with this stuff, sparks go shooting out because it rips the chrome right off. So we would hit the stem of valves with this stuff. Huh?
Extend the head.
The head, yes, clean the head. If you hit the stem, sparks. You're not supposed to do that now. Things have changed, right? Glass bead, it's very harsh. So it will, if you guys has everybody had a chance to glass bead something? Okay, glass bead will tear apart stuff. It will do some serious damage. You put a crankshaft in and glass bead that crankshaft, you know it was glass beaded. There is no doubt in my mind what I was, anything that was a journal that was polished, not no more, rips it right apart. Plastic and walnut are synonymous. So I preferred plastic. It's a little more expensive. It works just like walnut. It's very forgiving. It won't hurt polished surfaces. You could do it all day long on something. It won't hurt the glass. But plastic, it's just really just like ground up acrylic windows. It's just acrylic is all it is. And then sodium, which actually kind of belongs to the last thing. Sodium is really just baking soda. And it's very, very mild, extremely mild, to the point where it's like, wow, is this doing anything? But then I guess if you're Steve doing it. So poor Steve's over there with the walnut shell. How many hours were you trying to blast that?
Probably like an hour.
An hour. I think he had one speck of walnut shell. It would come out of the nozzle and hit his part, and then it would just kind of fall down, roll, find its way through, and then come back around and pink. Like, what are you doing, man?
So,
Yeah.
using the glass beads, like what parts would you use that under? Like what parts would you clean with that?
Anymore, you're not supposed to really use it. You have to be very careful. Most manuals have gone to saying don't use glass bead. Okay, where I will use glass bead around here is if we have a part that is rusted. Like let's say one of your gears is rusting. Or we had a lot of crankshafts that were rusting in front of them. And so what I would do is say, okay, let's just go ahead and glass bead it. Because around here, it's like it's not airworthy anyway. But at that point, I'm saying either we're going to glass bead it and save it, or we're just going to have to throw it away because it's rusted.
So glass bead would be like your last
Last resort, you're going to throw it away anyway, kind of.
Okay,
So
make or break.
yeah. Now out in the field, where do we use glass bead? It was part of the procedure for us. We would glass the cylinder heads themselves. Actually, we would use plastic because it's funny how each thing will do its job. So you take a cylinder, and you guys don't have one that's been run, but you take a cylinder that's got a couple hundred hours on it or more, and the carbon is just packed up in there. And it is just full. You can't even see the base metal inside anymore. So if you put it in a glass bead booth, you're going to spend a long time trying to glass bead all that carbon out. It's going to take forever. Put it in the plastic booth, and it just rips it apart. You're like, wow, it is gone. The big pellets just really knock it out and get rid of it. So you put the cylinder in the plastic, knock out all the carbon. In fact, you can do that. If you're going to blast your cylinders, it's really actually good for them to blast the inside of the cylinder, blast the ports with the walnut shell, get all that with walnut shell or plastic. I say plastic a lot, but it means the same thing as walnut. And then we would take ours over and actually polish it with glass bead. But the problem with that is really it peens over cracks. So when you go to do non-destructive testing, it doesn't pick up the dye well. So and you'll see a crack. Go, well, it didn't dye pen, but it's because it peened it over. It's bad. Some manuals actually tell you that it's not only acceptable but preferred practice to hit the seats, the valve seats, with some glass bead. But you got to be careful not to get the base metal. We would also allodyne our cylinders, which allodyne's a chemical where you can dip aluminum in and it turns them gold. It's like an anti-corrosion preventative, but it only turns it gold if you glass bead it. So we would hit it with glass bead and then take it over and dump it in the allodyne tank and rinse it. And it would do this really nice gold sheen to the cylinder heads. And I wouldn't paint them. I would just leave them gold. So that's why you guys, all of your cylinders, the base is painted, but the head is not. I don't like painted heads. That holds the heat in. So, all right, a lot of information. Okay, so blast media types. We had garnet. Garnet, glass bead, We have the plastic. Pretty plastic. That's sodium. Okay, so when I started here, the middle booth with the walnut, they had converted it to sodium. And I hated using it because, number one, it's really literally just Arm & Hammer baking soda. James did have people go to the store and, if you wanted to use it, you had to go bring a sack of, you can taste it. So it gets in the air, so I hate that taste. And second of all, you can't see anything after about 2 seconds. It goes IFR instantly, right? It clouds over. So you can't see a thing. You're just kind of blasting by braille in there, and you open the door and the fog comes up. And so I called Temple and Associates, where I always did my business with, because I remember the phone number, 1-800-GRIT-GUY. Hey, if you're looking for a good deal on grit blasting, call 1-800-GRIT-GUY. So I called them and I said, hey, I need to get some stuff. I said, well, we got this problem. And I said, started talking about sodium. He goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. He goes, you can't put sodium in a conventional booth. You have to get a special sodium booth. He goes, otherwise you can't see what you're doing. I'm like, I know. I didn't know that, so. Because I never use sodium, but you have to have a special booth for it. He said it's got all these extra filters, like more vacuum power and all kinds of stuff. And what was my last one I put on here? And there's others, of course. There's rice. No, okay, what didn't I put on here? Okay, rice. Rice. What else did you say, Kevin? Huh? Sand. Okay. Yes, because everybody wants to call it sand blasting. Nope. Rice, sand.
Baked wheat.
Oh yeah, rice, wheat. Okay, then the one booth that we're not using, what does that one have? Aluminum oxide. I never use that. I think it's just ripping paint off of steel stuff is what that's for. Aluminum oxide. What did you say? Steel shot. Yeah, steel shot. You actually get some with steel balls, which is good for peening stuff. Shot peening. Yeah, I already got plastic. So there's different types. So you gotta be careful. Know what it's for. And use the right stuff. So I think, what else do we have to say about cleaning methods? Oh, let me tell you this story here, if MJ won't, make fun of me here. All right, so I tell you, I'm making a big deal about getting these little 1/8-inch pipe plugs out of everybody's crankcase, right? And I made a big deal about, don't put a crankshaft in any of the blast media because I need to find my little bag of stuff. But there's sludge tubes in there. I'm going to talk about sludge tubes here in a little bit and explain what those are on these older crankshafts. But so we had a case in our shop after I took over in the engine shop. And I'd been working there now running and building the engines for a little while. And somebody called up and said, hey, we have a significant problem with one of your engines. And of course, the poo comes out, and I start freaking out. I go, what? I don't take bad news well. And, who is this? And he told me about the engine. I'm like, okay, I didn't build this engine. I had nothing to do with it. I never touched it again, never got near it. I didn't even know about it. And I said, tell me about the problem. And he says, well, we had desiccant go through it. And he said, I guess somebody put a bag of desiccant in the engine when it was for storage, and we started it up and went through the engine. You guys know what desiccant is? You should. Those little pink plugs you pulled out? Okay, that's desiccant. It absorbs moisture. When those things are new, and you're going to see them, hopefully, we're going to take them apart, we're going to put them in a pan, and we're going to bake them, and it's going to bake all the moisture out, and they're going to be the prettiest blue you've ever seen. It's just a really brilliant, dark royal blue, right? I don't know. Not good with colors. I'm like a guy who sees things in 16 colors. It's blue. So it turns blue. Not dark blue, just color blue, right there. So it looks just like that. And yours are pink. Well, when it collects moisture, they turn pink. Okay, so it's not uncommon to build an engine, send it to somebody. They say the aircraft isn't ready. It's a home built. It's prop strike. It's not fixed. Then they pack desiccant around it or in it to absorb moisture so it doesn't rust and corrode. And so this guy said, there's desiccant. And I thought, wow, we didn't normally use desiccant on our engine. Somebody else must have done it. So can you bring me a sample of the desiccant? So he absolutely, and he brings me the desiccant, and it is this color. So I just told you when it's new, it's blue. When you've seen it now, what color is it? Pink. It needs to be desiccant. This is color.
It's moldy. It's walnut desiccant.
It's plastic.
You heard the story?
No.
Yeah. It's plastic.
Oh, it's from the plastic beads
Plastic bead.
when he did the.
When they blasted the crankcase, the person who blasted the crankcase didn't pull all the plugs, didn't clean out the passages, and plastic bead got packed in the back of an oil passage. Why was it this color then, smart guy? Yep. Fluorescent.
Oh, yeah.
Went through the fluorescent penetrant inspection process. So when it was dunked in the fluorescent penetrant, which is this color, it stained all the balls that color. Then the engine was built, sent out, started up, the oil pump started, went in there, flushed all that out, and ran it through all the engine.
Sounds like a
That
party.
must have ran great.
Yeah. Well, it's hard on the bearings.
But it was plastic, right?
It's plastic. It's big plastic. So it really can't make it into the bearings, but, you know, it's just,
Still going everywhere.
yeah, so, you know, always learn from somebody else's mistakes if you can help it. So that became, you know, the new policy. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, you know. Never can any engine under, you know, there is no, I can't get that plug out. That plug's coming out if we have to drill it out. So I got really good at taking plugs out without having to drill them, and then I got really good at taking them out when I did have to drill them. So I drew a lot of plugs, pull them all out, and then I had a station. So for final cleaning, you know, after the plastic bead, then it was cleaned, then it was sent to NDT, and when it came out of NDT, then it got washed in the hot sea again, and then rinsed, and then it would go out. And literally, it would probably take me 20 minutes to clean a crankcase, maybe a half hour. So you take I had a whole, you know, I had air nozzles that were this long, and ones that had little fine tips. We had a whole set of dental picks and water hoses. And so you had to wash every passage out. You had to blow every passage all the way till the nozzle came out the other end. It came out. So I never had a problem after that. But that's why I'm so weird about, you got to get those plugs out, especially if you blast it, because you got to get all the walnut out. And you got to see all the way through it. So you make sure you see through there. All right. I think that's all I have to say about that. Let's move on to the engine. Here's what you came for. Crankcase. Well, we're going to start with the crankcase. Normally I've got crankcases in here and stuff. I didn't bring them today for this week because, well, I just thought, let's see if we can do without.
I just didn't feel like it.
Huh?
You're like, well, I just didn't feel like it.
I felt like it, but. All right, so we have well, this is a whole engine here. What kind of engine is this? I heard the word. Permold Continental engine. Why is it permold? Because it's got alternator. Why is it Continental? Because it's gold. And I will still call a Continental motor a TCM, even though it's no longer Teledyne Continental Motors. It is, yeah, Continental Motors Incorporated or something. I don't know what it is. I'm just going to go TCM. Sorry about that. So, all right. So for the new people in the group, we've got an alternator. I'll turn on my laser pointer here because Deuce isn't here. We got our alternator here. Got the crankshaft flange sticking out here. What do we have? Our cases, both right and left cases, right and left. These are the magnetos. Now, while I've got this up here, I want to make this point. That's what it is. The wrench size is not the size. And that's the. So, and there's the other. I was like, what's the other thing? This is the other thing. The direction of rotation for any accessories when viewed from the what?
The rear.
The direction of rotation of any accessory, a magneto is an accessory, is when viewed from the drive end. So those are my two things. That's what. Please put that on my gravestone when I die. So here lies Kevin, and yeah, you're in charge of that.
That's enough to say the wrench size is the bolt size.
Yeah. All right. So the direction of rotation from this is a magneto that makes a spark. The direction of rotation is when viewed from the drive end because let's see. Because I said so. Because most engines, all other engines, this magneto is in the back of the engine.
Yeah.
So if you say something really stupid, like, what's the direction of rotation of magneto? And you say, from the pilot's perspective, I say, oh, really? Because a Continental, they put them on this way. And on some engines, they go this way. So is it from the pilot's perspective? Does it just change then, the direction of rotation because it moved to the front? See, these are front-facing. So no, it is direction of rotation for magnetos, alternators, generators, fuel pumps, hydraulic pumps. What else can I think of? Anything that goes back there. Direction of rotation is when viewed from the drive end. So you pick it up, you look at the drive end, the part that gets driven, and you say, oh, if it goes to the right, that's the right. So So whose perspective is that?
Drive
It's the mechanic's perspective. All right. All right. Something else that is never makes sense to me is they say the crankcase of the engine is like. Let me know the answer. What's your book say? Come on.
Sorry.
That's like the backbone.
Crankcase?
Which is weird because when I go to my doctor and the doctor says, "Dude, you got a problem with your backbone." Backbone, he goes, "It's like a crankcase." No, it's not. It literally makes no sense. If anything had to be the backbone, I would say it's more like the crankshaft because it's at least long and sort of goes like that. So the reason why they say that is because the crankcase must support itself. It is where it is attached to the airframe. It contains the internal organs of the engine.
Yeah, that sounds more like ribcage.
It is. It's more like a rib cage. It's yes. So I probably purposely did not write that, but crankcase. So it is. So rather than putting it is the backbone of the engine, I wrote it is the case of the engine. It is the case of the engine.
case of the crank.
It is, yes, it is. But I did to this. What is its functions? What does it do? It has lots and lots of functions. Some of them I just said. Unlike my children, it must support itself.
I was gonna say close the cabinet.
And your son does.
I know. Yeah, tell that to Verizon. All right. It contains the bearings. Contains the bearings in which the crankshaft rotates. In which the crankshaft rotates. I could add on this one. Tell me about the bearings for your camshaft. They're non-existent. They don't exist. I've only seen one engine manufacturer put bearings for a camshaft. And that was like an old Franklin. So guess how often I take apart an engine, and they're all this way. Every Lycoming, every Continental I've ever opened up, horizontally opposed, not a single one of them has a cam bearing. So guess how many engines out of my career I have seen bad cam bearing bores? Maybe one, I can't think of it. They just don't wear. Don't know why.
Because
I
I was
know.
looking at the journals on them, like it looks like it's shooting them oil constantly.
It is. It's not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be metal on metal. It's actually riding in a cushion of oil. But okay, so does a crankshaft. The crankshaft rides in a cushion of oil between itself and the bearings. It's not really touching them. There's little oil between there. So then, by the same token, the crankshaft never wears. No, it really doesn't wear that much. Bearings take a little bit of wear, but not that much. So be surprised. But it wears enough that I've had enough engines come into my shop where it's like, yeah, I don't have oil pressure. And you do the whole diagnostic, and like, yeah, you don't have oil pressure. And I remember one engine I took apart, and I'm like, wow, it was huge in the back. There was so much. I'm like, yeah, you never were going to get it unless you use grease. All right. Contains the bearings which crankshaft provides, or it's supposed to provide tight enclosure for lubricating oil. Lubricating oil. What happens when that fails and it starts leaking oil everywhere? I'm going to go out on a limb, and up on a soapbox, and I'm going to say that probably more than 90% of all engine problems, leaking, broken studs, doesn't make it to TBO, that's pilot. All the other stuff, it's mechanic error. And I don't know what it is, and I'm just going to let you guys know, because my class, you guys are better than this. I don't know what it is about A&Ps. I know what it is. When you get your A&P license, your certificate, and you go out in the field, almost immediately somebody's going to be knocking on your door saying, hey, PK, man, you just got your A&P, right? Well, I've got this engine that needs overhaul, man. Will you do it for me? You know, there's always, I'll pay you $200, dude. You know, it's like $200, huh? Yeah. You know, I'll buy all the parts. You know, all you gotta do is put together. What does that take you? Like 2 days? That's $100 a day I'm paying you. And so, you know, there's always, and yes, I will tell you right now, these engines are so easy to put together. You took it apart, right? How hard do you think it is to put together? It's incredibly difficult.
Correctly or incorrectly?
Incorrectly is one of the easiest things I've ever done. Correctly, it is one of the most difficult things that, well, it's incredibly difficult to do it correctly if you're not taught the right way. And so, you know, I'm fortunate that the people who taught me really knew their stuff. But I'm also fortunate that I worked with people who really didn't know how and, you know, had done it for a very long time. This is exactly the way we've always done it here. And then I had somebody else who said, that will never work. That's going to leak. That's going to wear out the bearings. That's going to fret the case. That's going to start spitting studs. And that guy was right. So I'm going to tell you stuff, and it's true. You know, just like this guy, you know, my hangar mate. He's like, so you're an A&P, huh? Yeah. Do you know anything about engines? Not much, no. I've seen them put together a few times. Always be careful what you say. And he said, you know, I got this problem. Seems like every time I fly it and I open up the cowling, one of the studs from the cylinders is laying down the cowling.
The spare part.
Yeah. Well, tell me about that. I'm going to bet you lunch this was not a factory overhaul. Yeah, how do you know that? Well, I know exactly what happened. It was dry torqued. There wasn't enough pretension on the studs. They're knocking the studs out left and right. They're knocking the studs out, you're fretting the case halves. You're fretting the case halves, you're losing material. Every time you torque it back together, you're risking seizing the bearings on the crankshaft. If you didn't get that, it's going to make more sense as I go. But one little problem leads to gigantic problems. So you have to know what you're doing. Okay, provides a tight. Okay, so why do they start leaking? Because they weren't properly sealed. The sealant that they put on wasn't put on properly. I'm going to show you that calls for. You have some options with sealants. So we're going to use this particular option, and you have to put silk thread in. And it says the silk thread must be a very specific silk thread. And do you know? I mean, even what I got here. We have a silk thread. Yeah, it's right here. Okay, this is freaking rope, and it's nylon. All right, I'm not making that up. It's nylon freaking rope. I mean, I think, you know, I could rappel with it. It was huge. And I'm like, no, it keeps the, okay, it's specific. Let's see. Oh, you guys saw the crankcase that came in? It's sitting out there that's busted. It's only got it's got less than 100 hours on it, and it's the biggest crack I've ever seen in a crankcase. So I started examining it. Yeah, I don't think that was silk thread in there. So it's some sort of thread that was holding the case apart, and when that thread starts to wear and give out, then the cases are loose. When the cases are loose, they start moving. Bad things start happening. So and some of you have been shocked. Well, how come there's no gasket between there? Okay, those things are mated surfaces, machine-mated surfaces. Those cases, they have to go together and form like I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? A what?
A bond.
A bond. It's like, yeah, it's a bond. It's a zero clearance. It's no room for error. Because what it comes down to is then you have your bearing halves in there. Okay, those bearing halves have to be brought together and held steady. If you don't, then they're going to start moving. And they start moving, then they start spinning. That's called a spun bearing. And then it starts spinning in the case. And then that makes aluminum. And so all of this stuff is precise tolerance based on the fact that it's machine to machine with proper torque. I will not let up on that. Supports various internal, various internal and external components What kind of, I have of the power plant, but you get it. What kind of components? Tell me.
Crankshaft.
You are correct. That would be an internal component. I was thinking external. What else we got? Okay, alternator, external. Camshaft, internal. Magnetos, external. Cylinders, external. Tappets, internal. These are all correct answers. These are great answers. A vacuum pump. Direction of rotation of vacuum pump is when?
Drive in.
Viewed from the drive end. Yes, alternators, generators, vacuum pumps, fuel pumps, oil pumps. We have all of that stuff. It's got to support and provide a place for all that. Provides mounting to the airframe. Mounting to the airframe. And there are many different styles of mounting. So if we go back to this engine, Continental uses legs down here. They have little legs that come down. So it's got the motor mount actually comes way out on like rails, and then the engine mounts here and here. Lycoming does not do that. Everything they have goes from the back. Let's see. Oops. Not what I wanted to do. See if we can find a nice Lycoming. Look at this one here. I don't know if you can see that. These giant rings back here. This is a dynafocal mount. So it's got 4 big mounts in the back. So you can take these big rubber cushions, and it's called dynafocal. And because why is they're all, and you're going to hate dynafocal because they're all aimed towards the center mass of the engine. And so all the bolts have to come in this way. And think about that. It means it's all got to, it's out here. The bolts are closer together, out here. So you got to line it up perfect, or you don't get those bolts in. Then there's straight mount. Let me see if I have a straight mount. You guys have straight mount. So there's all different kinds. Where are we here? Glass bead. There we go. There's straight mount. That one's actually an angled mount right there. So you got mounts back here. So it's got the mount supporting there. You got to do all of that. Mounting to the airframe. Let's see. Unless it's what kind of engine? There's Steve.
No.
Yeah.
Circular
That's right. Yeah, provides support, provides
goes in circles.
provides support and attachment. Support and attachment of the cylinders. All right, material. Material. What is it made out of? It is an aluminum casting. The whole thing. And yet, a lot of you want to oil the shiny surfaces on the inside. Why do you want to oil those? Somebody tell me. Because it looks nice? You don't need to. Aluminum's not going to rust. We have sand. There are different types of casting. One type is called sand casting. Sand casting. It is much rougher. And one thing I've noticed about working on engines, whenever something doesn't look right, maybe it isn't, but there's always somebody to explain it away. Hey, that's sand. You guys have a sand casting. Is it kind of rough?
Yeah.
Oh, it's meant to be that way. Why is it meant to be that way? Well, that extra roughness has little bumps on the outside, and those little bumps act like microscopic cooling fins. I'm not kidding. I've been told this at the Lycoming school. That is to keep the microscopic cooling fin. It keeps it cooler. Okay. Why is it rough on the inside of the cylinders? Because they're sand cast. Oh, well, that mixes up the fuel and air much better. Never mind that guy over there who ports and polishes them and gets more horsepower. That's not. He's making it up. Don't look over there. All right, so sand casting is rougher. I actually wrote this. Roughness helps dissipate heat. I'm going to let you write that if you feel like it's true. So I don't know. So there's the sand casting, and then I told you there's the permold casting. Permold casting. Also called investment casting. Investment casting. Investment casting is much prettier. So not being a person that manufactures stuff like this, I'm like, well, I really want to know the difference between these two and how they're made. So I watched a bunch of videos on this because, you can now. And investment casting is pretty cool. Does anybody know the difference? Yeah, go ahead.
A little bit.
You want to give it your shot.
I just know that investment is a different type of material that they're using. It's more of like an epoxy, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
it is. Yeah, it's like you have to make a negative out of it, and a positive and a negative. And when I watched it, it made sense. I just don't remember it that well, but you're using an epoxy thing where you actually create something, and then anyway, you end up making a hollow out of it, and you still pour the stuff in, but it's just much smoother, and much nicer is where sand casting is like literally playing in the sand. You take sand and you make your thing out of sand, and then you pour your molten metal in. So that's why it's rough, because you actually pour it in sand, whereas investment, it's a wax. I'm sorry, it's a wax-based thing, right?
Well, the wax is what you use to make the hollow.
Yeah, okay.
Because yeah, you'd make it with your casting to make the mold, and then you're using the wax to have the I guess your mold of it to do the investment. There's more steps to it.
There's a lot more steps.
Yeah.
Okay, so why do I tell you this sand cast per mold thing? Well, the thing that you need to know about this is not so much, okay, these two things, I got to remember what sand cast. The problem is Continental has a difference between their sand cast and their per mold. And in the Overhaul manual, they just say, in the sand cast ones, you do this, and in the per mold, you do this. And you're stuck going, wait a minute, I don't even know what those two words mean. Well, now you know what they mean. And then if we go back to my picture, and I say, well, what kind is this? And Alan jumped out, it's a per mold. Well, what? Can he see how smooth it is from where he's sitting? Because he's sitting up front?
It's the alternator.
It's not. The per mold all had a front mount alternator. Now, why couldn't they just say in the models with the front mount alternator, but no, they would like to say per mold? Well, I guess it keeps the uneducated from dealing with this, right? So now that you're educated, you're like, yeah, I know what that is. So anyway, but this is an investment or per mold cast is what they call it, because it has the alternator mount, and that's the way they made those. All right, so we got the per mold, we got the investment casting. They obviously come in multiple sections, so I think this is where my outline just jumps to D for some reason, but you know what? You can put whatever you want. So multiple sections. And you know that. You're working on an opposed engine, so the opposed. How many K-sabs do you have? How many sections? Two sections.
Is it 2 or would it be considered 3?
I was wondering if I was here 3, it's 2. They are a matched, mated for life pair. They're like penguins. If that's even true. I don't think it is. So and then you'll notice your serial number stamped on both sides. So if you have one broken, you can't say, don't call around and ask Lycoming for a right-hand crankcase. I see the right side, my left side's still good. So they're actually made and they're brought together, and then all of those holes, like where the camshaft goes, where the crankshaft goes, they're line bored in those two. So they're made that way. They're actually kind of solid, and then they're line bored out. So opposed has 2 sections. Let's see what I say. Non-interchangeable. 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 Match set. Match set. All right, so we have your opposed, and you have your 2 sections, which we call right and left. From whose perspective? From behind. Behind. Geez, you guys are all like, I don't know what to say. It's just going to yell at me. So radial. How about radial engines? Radial engines. They will have 3 to 7 sections. Three to 7 sections. Well, since we're going through, here's my crankcase. I got my right and my left. Yes? Mm-hmm. What is this funny thing right here? You guys actually have, for the most part, O290 Gs. They are not Ds, they are Gs. What does the G stand for? Ground power unit. So these were ground power units. They were never actually aircraft engines. But Larry is pretty familiar with this, and as he will tell you, or has explained to me, home builders love these things. And so what they do, and that's why the front of yours looks a little funny. They had this big flange and stuff, and they grind this all flange down around the case to make it look more like it would if it was an O290G. D. A regular airplane engine, and then the crankshaft is actually much thinner than it would have been in an actual aircraft engine. And we even have an example in the back in the storage unit where they weld a flange to the front. That sounds like a bad idea, but those flanges are thinner because they got a big flyweight and they just didn't have the stresses of a propeller. But anyway, so you don't have. I'm like, why did I tell you that? Most of you don't have this up front. This is a breather, and so any of the combustion that gets by the rings, and it gets by the rings, is going to fill up and pressurize the crankcase. And if you pressurize the crankcase, something's got to give. And what's the easiest thing to give, if anybody knows? The nose seal. So if you blow out the nose seal, then the oil goes out the front of the engine and it goes right back onto the windshield, and then you cannot see where you're going. And so you crash into things, and it's frowned upon. So this is a breather, and so just a hose attaches to this and goes overboard down the
Is
belly
it
of the
kinda
plane.
like a catch can?
No, it just goes, the hose goes right overboard. It's just air, just air. So we may come back to this one, but you got your right and your left hand. Sides, let me see, I got to get to my, well, I was hoping to get to the radial. There we go, here's a radial. We'll come back to some of the other ones. I don't know what kind of radial this is. I can't really see what it looks like, what that is. But, all right, so how many sections do we have here? We've got one here, the nose section. Power section is in two. 1, 2. There's a split right here. 1, 2. Probably right here is 3. This is going to be the supercharger or impeller section. And then 4, 5, maybe back here with the accessory case. So at a minimum, I've got nose section. This one's got 2 for the power. You can get away with 1 if you've got a split crank. 1, and then so 1, 2, 3, 4. This one has at least 5 because it's got the supercharger section in it. What else do I got here? Not talk about bearings. All right, not there yet.
Is it gonna go up to 7?
Yeah, that's what my notes are. 3 to 7 sections. Hey, and guess what time it is? All right. Well, they're already lined up for the. I don't want you guys to feel left out. So we will write down what the sections are and continue this tomorrow.